Thank you so much for joining us, Lindiwe. We really appreciate you taking the time. Can you please tell us about yourself?
Hi, Nwabisa. My name is Lindiwe Johnson. I am the Skills Development Project Manager at Green Cape. I used to be part of the Western Cape Industrial Symbiosis program at Green Cape. And in my current role, I look at how we can, how we break barriers and how we remove barriers for entry into different industries by identifying skills gaps. And then in my previous role as a Western Cape Industrial Symbiosis Project Program Manager, I'm mainly focused on how to divert waste away from landfills by helping the manufacturing industry and businesses in and around the Western Cape. I've focused primarily on the textiles industry and then also paper and publishing, and then a little bit of the film industry as well. So those were the primary industries I actually focused on.
To my next question now, with what you've just mentioned with regards to waste. So for anyone who's never heard of the term industrial symbiosis, what is it exactly?
So it's actually a very easy term to understand. Industrial symbiosis is the microcosm of what we now know as circular economy. So industrial symbiosis actually looks at systems within a manufacturing industry. This is now before it gets to a consumer. So we look at how materials flow in an industry or sectors, and we then, through the industrial symbiosis program, we then help companies, as I mentioned, make their waste valuable. So we give waste a second life by helping businesses identify the waste firstly, and then secondly, finding either partners or helping the business identify ways of reusing that material again in their production. Just an example, you get people who throw away egg whites because they don't need it in their production. You get wastage from, say, your eggs, the eggshells. You get wastage when you have a company that, for instance, produces cut material or cut vegetables, then all the skins get thrown away.
How do you guys then come into the situation?
So when we engage with a company, more often than not, they might be diverting a small portion of what they're currently doing or have no diversion at all, which means that all that waste is currently being transported to landfill. And with us, we help them see that actually sometimes that their waste has value. Just an example, I mentioned that a company was literally throwing egg whites down the drain because they couldn't use it. It wasn't part
they
of
saw
their
no value
production.
In the egg whites.
They saw no value in it. So they sold some of it, but it got so much that they used to then just drain it down the drain. We then found a confectionery. So that's like a little deli, a place that makes sweet cakes and stuff. And they actually started purchasing all this egg whites from this company. So do you understand how that identifying of a waste and then finding a partner that can actually use that waste now works?
Not only is sort of like an income generating opportunity for the company, but also the fact that that waste now has sort of like a new lease on life. It's all part of the circular economy that you mentioned right from the beginning of this interview. So preventing that waste from going to landfill, but instead it being a resource that can be used. What's coming into mind now is that, so the businesses where they operate and where they discard their waste, right, to the different landfill sites, obviously there are people in these areas. And I just wanted to understand, how does your program advocate for not only for the protection of the environment, but for the protection of the people that are in it as well?
So we do this indirectly through our circular economy program. So we do have a program that looks at dignifying the work that waste pickers actually do. So there's a lot around training them, helping them to also have a relevant voice, and making sure that residents understand the value that also waste pickers sometimes bring to their homes. So and to the waste industry itself. So we do have a program that really looks at dignifying the work of waste pickers. And that has actually been a project that we've been driven with the city of Cape Town.
Just your advice, and also just sort of questions that you think an individual should ask themselves in if they ever to evaluate a green business.
I think the first point is to understand where the business's resources are coming from. So we often just think of the end product, but we don't think of what's at the beginning. So are you importing your problem? Are you importing your material? Can it be locally sourced? If so, why haven't you sourced it locally? So those are the two essential questions I think you can ask yourself. And then the second point I think would be ask, are you separating at source, which means are you separating where you are working? So do you have bins where you are working? So for instance, in a textile factory, do they have a bin that separates materials from papers and plastics? Is there that type of system in place and inside your factory, so that it's not too much work at the end of the day to then separate? And then the third question, which is the most important question, what are you doing with your waste?
So you mentioned all of these wonderful things that the program does, and we're interested to find out whether there are different social groups and just stakeholders who are part of these conversations, decision makings, or whenever you guys anticipate any risk or challenges. Do you have those kind of inputs?
Our first point is always to work with the industry associations, because sometimes the industry associations can drive change within industries, and they can help to also create some sort of benchmark for industries and how that businesses should conduct their business. Then we need, in order for us to actually do our work, we do need the support of our local governments. And in this case, we work hand in hand with the city of Cape Town. And then obviously the businesses itself is also quite crucial, because they are the people that we then assist and help to identify the different waste streams. And then we also work particularly hand in hand with waste service providers. So that's your waste companies, your truckers, and people that do either recycling or just general waste. We need to work with them because we need to have so that we can link industry also with the initiatives that they're driving. So there's that linkage between there as well. There's one more stakeholder that's quite critical in this process that I should not let forget. And that's the organization that put together the platform where we host all the materials and companies, and their name is Synergy. And every time we make a linkage, we call that a synergy at the end of the day. So it's pretty cool. They're actually based in the UK, and they actually developed this initial program. It started in the UK, actually. We then adopted it, and we give it a little bit more of a South African context, because we obviously have different parameters that we work with than the UK.
And with waste management, it's obviously it won't be in the picture, like in the front, okay, this is the exact amount of waste that we produce. Yeah. But it's always beautiful to hear such stories of actually, what, we can have a resource out of this waste. And I think that's what really our participants should listen into, and understanding that there's value in that waste. And for it, instead of it end up in landfill, actually, let's think of a way of actually making a life out of this or a resource out of this.
Exactly.